I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Licensed mental health professionals, we warmly invite you to join our Spring 2026 NARM Therapist Training, a live online immersion into the transformative power of the neuroaffective relational model. This advanced clinical training is designed specifically for those seeking to deepen their expertise in healing complex trauma while offering the accessibility of an online format. From January to August 2026, you'll be part of a supportive virtual community of learners integrating mindfulness and clinical expertise. Through 4 comprehensive modules, you'll gain specialized trauma-informed knowledge and skills to confidently and compassionately address the impacts of adverse childhood experiences and complex trauma. Together, we'll explore how to support the resolution of attachment, developmental, relational, cultural, and intergenerational trauma using a neurobiologically informed approach that promotes post-traumatic growth. Embodying professional and personal growth, you'll become a catalyst for transformation in your practice and community. Enrollment is now open for licensed psychotherapists, counselors, social workers, psychologists, and other mental health professionals, as well as graduate trainees and interns working toward licensure. Visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com to learn more and secure your spot in this online training opportunity. And now for our interview. This episode is a conversation between the Complex Trauma Training Center senior faculty, Brad Kammer, Stefanie Klein, and Marcia Black, as they reflect on the first year of the SPACE program, an interdevelopment program of support and self-discovery for therapists. Brad Kammer is a licensed marriage and family therapist and professional clinical counselor. Brad is trained as a body-mind psychotherapist and co-authored the Workbook for Healing Developmental Trauma. Marcia Black is a licensed clinical psychologist with a background in attachment, relational, and intersubjective approaches. She has been in private practice for over 35 years in San Francisco and the East Bay area. Lastly, Stefanie Klein is a licensed clinical social worker and has spent 22 years in her Los Angeles private practice, specializing in treating adults with trauma and anxiety disorders. Please enjoy this episode with Brad, Stefanie, and Marcia. All right. I am joined today by Brad Kammer, Stefanie Klein, Marcia Black. Welcome all of you to Transforming Trauma.
Thank you. Hi, Emily.
Wow.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah,
nice
so
to
good
see
to
you.
be with all of you. I feel like this is so rare that we all get to be together in one space. So I'd love to begin by asking each of you individually, maybe we can just do it popcorn style, whoever feels moved first. But I'd love to hear from each of you what you'd like for our listeners to get out of our time together today.
I think we wanted to reflect on our first year of the SPACE program. We were super excited to put this program together. I think last time the 4 of us talked, and now we launched it at the beginning of 2025, and here we are at the end of 2025, looking into 2026, and we've successfully completed our first year of our SPACE program, and we'd love to reflect. We haven't had a chance to do this that much either, to really just look back on the year and some of the highlights, some of the feedback we've received, and some of how it's really shaped and impacted us, and then where we're headed next.
Right.
Yeah,
And if anyone, sorry,
I was
Stefanie.
going to popcorn right in, Emily. But okay.
I was going to say, if listeners wanted to listen back, that first episode that Brad mentioned was in September of 24, episode number 142. So if you don't know much about SPACE, maybe jump back and listen to that episode. Okay, Stefanie, let's hear from you.
Thanks. Sorry,
It's all good.
I was just thinking about, like, for listeners that have no idea what SPACE is, it could be interesting to just get a sense of this program we created at CTTC and Complex Trauma Training Center, and why we think it's important. And I thought it also could be fun for people who are a part of the program who are listening to just reflect on their journey with SPACE, whether they did one class or all the classes. We're moving into class 6 here. And we recreated the program kind of not knowing where it was going to go. We just had some intentions, but we kind of expected it to create itself in a certain way and evolve. And so just fun, like Brad said, for us to get a chance to reflect, because I think for all of us, it ended up being more than we even expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also add that not only is it a co-creation of the 3 of us, but it's really become a co-creation with space participants. And even right up till the last session where we invited people to share at some depth what they were really most impacted by. And the class itself has been impactful for us in our own growth. So it's kind of an evolving, really a dynamic, alive experience. And one person even said in the evaluations, I could keep doing this for the rest of my life, which was in some ways what we were hoping for, that it would be a kind of an ongoing dynamic experience for all of us. So it'd be nice to share that with people.
Yeah. One thing that I loved that came out of it right from the beginning was in one of those classes, I can't remember if it was the first or the second, you each shared kind of a nutshell version of your origin story, which inspired some episodes that were here on the podcast. So that's something that I really enjoyed, and I know others did. And it's kind of grown into something that we've all been able to take a part of. So yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. Well, thank you for each kind of sharing that. Brad, I'd love to, if you wanted to give just like a little nutshell version of kind of what inspired its creation, or where did you want to go? Maybe I should
Love
leave that to you.
It's a great place to start. I'm sure we probably talked a little bit about that, but it's nice to revisit and deepen it now, having done this for the first year. But yeah, when we created Complex Trauma Training Center, our vision, the three of us, was really about mentorship and creating a professional community where people could engage very intensively or just pop in and out for a class or for a consult or for a training. And, a lot of times, therapists are working very independently. A lot of people are in private practice, or even if they're in group practice or they work at a facility or an agency, they often don't feel like they're with their people. And so coming together with a group of people, therapists that are really willing to do this depth-oriented work inside themselves and learn not just about how to better help their clients, but how they can help themselves as well, both clinically in their development, but also personally. It feels like a very safe and inclusive community to be part of when people are doing their ongoing work. And so we, the three of us are really inspired and love being mentors and getting our own mentorship too, and co-mentoring each other. So we're kind of, wanting to create programs that are about not just us teaching what to do, but really supporting the relationship and how we can deepen into being with our clients and with ourselves as we're with our clients. So that's really where space came from. Space, the idea of space is space on three levels of the human experience. So within us, creating more space inside of us as therapists, as humans, as in our role as therapists. Space in the relational field. We'll talk maybe more about the last class, class 5 that we did this year, which was about relational enactments and how that collapses space between us and our clients. And then the transpersonal space that's not really talked about all that much in traditional psychotherapy approaches. And so we're bringing that in to also look at some of the transpersonal elements that happen when you work in a depth-oriented, relationally based way. So lots more to say, but I'll turn it over to Marcia and Stefanie to add more here.
I was thinking while you were talking, Brad, about one of the topics in class 5, which was asking for and receiving support. And one of the strong relational patterns and dynamics that a lot of therapists walk around with is that they feel very comfortable helping, but and being supporters, but they struggle with their own asking for help and receiving support. And just think about that. I was thinking about it the whole weekend, that, the whole program and showing up to that program is an acknowledgement that the people practicing all of these skills that we learned, all these approaches that we spend so much time and money learning, those people are often not asking for and receiving support, whether that's just community and hearing other people's experiences or their own psychotherapy or their own consultation. And so just one of the many topics that we explore to look inside and to, focus on the inner development of the people practicing the skills. And I mean, I know I'm talking to you, you're asking the questions, Emily, but you're also a person doing this inside out work with us, which is incredible, that you're a part of it as well.
Yeah, and I just want to name that last class. I was so moved by how transparent and vulnerable folks were being in their experience and sharing, and it was so enriching for me. Again, Brad, as you named, like this community aspect and feeling really connected. It just continues to really, it just feels so rich. So I'm so, and I'm feeling that right now in this moment. I'm feeling touched and just so grateful for the three of you for creating this. Yeah.
I mean, it speaks to part of our intention, really, I think, as Brad touched on, it was to create a community of support, that we're in how we show up, in what we support in the exercises, in the small groups and the medium-sized group and the large group, is really a space where people feel able to be vulnerable, be open, to receive support, to ask for support. And it's been really rewarding to get that feedback where students are saying, as you are, that they are supported and inspired by the courage and vulnerability of each other to want to go more deeply into those, challenging and dark spaces and unknown places within themselves. So it's partly the cultivation of a kind of field of support and openness and willingness to go deeper.
Yeah. And as a participant, to witness the three of you walk into those spaces and really model that and kind of like lead the way so that the rest of us can be like, yeah, that's what we're doing here. It's safe to do that here. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, that was the theme of class 2, which was all about how can we embody our vulnerability to actually deepen intimacy and connection. And going back to what Stefanie was saying, it's like part of why we don't, go for support is because we have a lot of shame about it. And we're taught in many cultures around the world, we're taught to know things and do things on our own. And, not knowing that there's people that can and want to support us. And so we then end up not sharing from a vulnerable place. And so everyone looks like an expert. And then, that starts to create its own enactments that are difficult for both therapists and clients. And so, yeah, I think one of the important things is we're doing all these exercises, the three of us, as we're creating them, we're doing as much as we can to bring in our own learning, our own vulnerability, the places that we've needed support or still need support, and trying to really, embody and model how we can be intimate and real and authentic and still hold, our expertise and our confidence and our authority as people that are providing really meaningful support for many clients that are in need.
Yeah. Well, I know we wanted this conversation to be really organic, so we didn't plan a lot out, but I have some specific questions I wanted to ask. I don't know, is that okay if we just kind of dive into that?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. Yeah. I've been so curious to hear from the three of you, what some of the moments were this year that have stood out, and you're already kind of speaking to them, but stood out as evidence that this, the relational field that you've created, that it's being supportive in the way that you want it. I'd love to just hear from each of you if you have any things that have stood out to you.
Oh, yeah. I come to mind really quickly in our pods, which are kind of medium-sized groups, and each group is with one of us as well. And we do these intersubjective explorations. So we, as you know, we explore some dynamic, some response that gets evoked in us sitting with a client. And that is related, obviously, to unresolved interpersonal patterns and dynamics. And, these are the things that get enacted when we don't pay attention to them. And gosh, those have been just so touching. And people have been so open and willing to reveal themselves in such important ways. And then, getting the space to be able to look at these reactions that we have in parts of ourselves without judgment and with support That's been really touching to me. And the other one that has been like way more touching than I expected to be is that we'll ask a question. Like, I'll just use the topic, like, what gets in the way of you asking for support? And we invite people to chat in phrases or words, and then we type them on the slide so we can all look at them together. And it's powerful. Just these little phrases and words, when you look at them as a whole from this group, and when people get to see others having the same concerns as they do, and the bravery of the things that people are willing to put up there for us all to kind of be in together has been really touching.
You, Stefanie.
One of the things that I've been really impacted by and also touched by is how in these explorations, students have had the experience of feeling themselves in the work. Like, we have a tendency, I think, to disconnect from parts of ourselves and effort, or try to do a certain intervention. And when we explore some of the ways that students find a different relationship to those parts of them in the work, and actually have the experience of I matter, like who I am, and this experience that I'm having actually is important in the work, maybe more important even than the specific intervention. And not only that, what's going on inside of them might support their work rather than get in the way of it, but also that they get to enjoy their work, like that it's the almost a novelty, that part of what we're supporting here is an experience where, through the growth that students get to have and we get to have, the work becomes more enlivening and exciting and enjoyable for us. As you know, we do this all day long. Of course, the idea that we should get to enjoy our work as a novelty is interesting, but it's really lovely to support people in connecting to parts of themselves that they might have devalued or disconnected from, and seeing that it can actually be a gift to bring those parts into the work.
So sweet.
I think that leads into, I'm totally in agreement with everything Stefanie and Marcia have said, but I want to talk about kind of the sacred quality of the space that gets created in these groups. And again, it's something that's kind of hard to talk about so much. When we talk about spirituality, it's like from the outside in, and it tends to be very performative or very obligatory. Like, you have to follow things and do different kind of rituals or whatever. And then it's like, okay, now we're in the category of this being a spiritual experience. And we're doing, the transpersonal is a big part of this program, but it's from the inside out, that we're not legislating any way to find that inside. People sometimes access it, sometimes they don't. But I think a lot of people have been giving feedback that we're touching into something that is depthful and often feeling very deeply nourishing as part of this collective group and this collective experience. And I do hope that people kind of can bring that back into their work with the clients, because I think we're suffering in our world from not just, as Marcia was saying, like loss of enjoyment and pleasure, but also loss of this deep sense of connection and belonging, and that life is precious and sacred. So yeah, how do we talk about spirituality without kind of collapsing the space around spirituality? So we do different exercises that aren't really geared towards spirituality, but are supporting the possibility that people can connect on deeper levels. And I love that, because I don't like the performative stuff. I like the stuff that kind of sneaks up on you and you're like, whoa, like that was much more powerful than I thought it was going to be. And, yeah.
Oh gosh, your naming is something that has felt so important for me in these classes. And that's kind of like there's a prompt, and, I guess just at first glance, most folks wouldn't realize kind of how the depths of where that can go. And there's been so many moments where I've been surprised, like you're saying, Brad, where I'm like, wow, that was like really, there was a lot there that I wasn't expecting. So that's been really sweet for me. And I know others have experienced that too. So yeah, thanks for naming that.
It makes me curious about you, if there's anything that has stood out for you as a moment that really landed? Or
Well, there's been several. I mean, one I kind of named earlier is I remember as you each were, and actually in this last class, I know you each just got very personal and open about some things that you had experienced in your work, and those moments helped me access something inside of myself where I'm like feeling in the humanity, and I'm feeling this collective, like we're all in it together in a kind of way that feels new, especially for me. I'll speak for myself, but I think others have named this too, that like being in groups in a different way, experiencing a group, moment in a different way than how I related to it before. There's like words I want to use and I hesitate, but there's spaces, Brad, you said it, like this performative kind of nature, where if you've been in those kinds of spaces before, to enter into something that feels uninhibited by that kind of quality, it's so freeing. And there have been several moments where I've just felt so touched. And a lot of that has been when the three of you have kind of modeled this quality of just being with, that really helps me access that transpersonal thing. And there have been so many moments like that, so it's hard to like name one. But I would say when each of you gave your kind of origin story in a nutshell, and then listening to you each with the podcast, it was just really special. And those are moments that have stood out to me, Stefanie.
Thanks. I didn't mean to put you on a spot.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. Yeah. I loved talking about it clearly. So yeah. Brad, was there anything else that you wanted to explore before I kind of go back into questions that I was curious about?
I was just thinking about the intention of the origin story. It's like the intention was to reflect on some of these themes that we're talking about right now, like who were the mentors that impacted us? What were the learning experiences? Usually for therapists, they remember the worst situations that we've had with clients that have been scary, overwhelming, ethical or legal challenges, boundary challenges. Like we remember those experiences, and we usually just like want to get through them and move on and like leave them in the past. And yet they often like are evoking very important material inside of ourselves. Of course, we want to resolve them on the outside, but in the inside, there's a lot of like wisdom that emerges. And so it is a little scary sometimes initially to kind of like unpack some of these experiences, because a lot of the exercises we're doing are about some of our more challenging clients and cases and what gets evoked in us. But it feels so relieving to have a safe and supportive space to actually look at it, and not like we have to do anything exactly, but to really just be in a new relationship with ourselves around the complexity of this work is super complex, and there's no right answers. It's all kind of gray, and we do the absolute best we can given, the circumstances. And there's just something nice about being in an environment where we can just continually learn, and then we learn about our learning, and then we learn about the learning of the learning. It's like, it's so fun to be part of that. And I think that goes back to Marcia, that quote from someone, the evaluation, like, yeah, you can get trained in a clinical model and then feel like, a lot of expertise in the model, but can we ever fully stop our own personal development that supports us in our role of no matter what clinical approaches we're using?
There's something coming up for me, and I'm just trying to suss out if it like is relevant here. But I'm just thinking about how I told on a previous podcast episode, my first experience with therapy, I was 18. I went back in my 20s, multiple times in my 20s, and again in my early 30s. And I have a vivid memory of like a moment in my early 30s when I realized, I think my therapist is having feelings about this. That was the first time it even like dawned on me or crossed my mind. This is interesting as I'm saying this out loud. My therapist is a human. And so, you know what I mean? Like, wow, they're a human too. And like the layers that is, like how much deeper I'm feeling into that. I'm just so appreciative. So I don't know if that comes across or if that makes sense, but that's really the work that we're doing here.
It does really relate, because that is what we're talking about here, is humanizing the therapist and, turning all of that energy that we have towards everybody else inward. And the side effect is that actually helps us be better therapists. So it supports both sides. But your therapist is a whole ass human, which means we're a whole ass human.
It reminds me of one of my favorite exercises we've done in space, which is to kind of reflect back, going all the way back to as much as you can remember of your childhood, and a teacher that kind of was your favorite teacher. And it could be your fourth grade teacher, a high school teacher, a college teacher, and to just think about them for a second and try to remember one thing you learned from them in the class. You'll probably have a difficult time remembering what you learned in your fourth grade or high school class, but you remember and you've carried that person with you. Like, the impact was not what you learned cognitively. It was about some way that they made you feel, that you kind of, took in part of them and you've carried them forward. And that's our role for our clients. Like, they're probably not going to remember all the smart things that we said about the brain and, about these complex family systems and stuff. They're going to remember the way we show up with them in an authentic way. And it's not always feeling good either. It's about being a real human, which means that we have the capacity to be with them when they're in their dark periods, or when there's conflict between us, or when there's uncertainty, and that we're not rushing to try to get through it. And that creates a sense of trust in us and in the process. And it creates intimacy, because that's, where life exists, in those intimate moments of humans that are so precious.
Yeah. Brad, you have me tearing up about my third grade teacher, Mrs. Toma. She's really great.
Teacher, yeah.
So shout out our teachers.
Yeah. Oh, they're good. I was curious, looking back on this first cohort, were there any themes or patterns that you noticed kind of emerge in the work, maybe in those pods or even in the smaller groups, that were surprising, or maybe that affirmed, the need for this kind of program?
That's Marcia. A thinker. Yeah, Marcia.
I was looking back on the evaluations. One of the things that struck me, interestingly, is how much people love the triads and dyads. Sometimes in our trainings, those are not necessarily the most valued parts. They want to be, doing the learning and the teaching. And there's something about the invitations that we create in those where we invite them, we give them prompts, actually, which are really interesting, because if you ask somebody, what their most challenging client is, or something like that, where they're struggling, they may pick something, but the prompts actually maybe speak into a blind spot. And even we had prompts that weren't around difficult clients, they're around maybe clients that you feel like you're working well with. And so it invited, I think, students into unknown territory right off the bat. And then they were in that territory with each other and in that atmosphere that we created. And I think there was a lot of value in that. And then that we bring back into a slightly larger group where people get to do a deeper exploration with one of us. But I think students were really surprised, for example, that things opened up for them, even looking at clients that they saw themselves as working well with, that there was unknown territory in those too. So there was a lot of positive reactions to the small groups. And certainly that opened up, I think, more kind of vulnerability in the larger groups that we sometimes have.
Yeah.
So
is it okay if I share a little bit of my experience exactly with what you just named, Marcia?
Yeah.
So I was one that I was like, oh, this is an easy client. I realized I was avoiding actually looking at some things in this relationship with this client who it feels like easy work in some ways. And then I realized maybe some of the reasons why it was easy, and that there was things I wasn't looking at. And it's continuing to be so rich for me to start looking at some of those things. And the other thing I noticed is that in the past, I would have shamed myself about that. How could I not see this? How could I? And I didn't. It felt so good. I was so excited to tell my triad, like, I'm finding something really hard to look at and I'm excited about it. How cool is that?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really big for me.
I think you two are speaking of a theme that I've noticed. It's actually a paradoxical theme, but I hope it makes sense. On one hand, I am blown away by the level of courage that folks in our program are willing to look at themselves, because we hide a lot. We use it as a strategy that we're the therapist, and it kind of protects us from looking at our own vulnerable places. But I'm just blown away every group that, like, the depth of the group is because we have people that are willing to self reflect in the way they are. The paradoxical part of it is that I'm also blown away by how many enactments we are in with our clients. And it's blind to us for the most part. Like, because you were just describing, Emily, like more of kind of like a quote positive enactment, which is like, no, I like this client, it's going well, and sometimes those are the hardest actually, because it's more subtle. We're more invested in a certain way than a client that's kind of adversarial towards us. But the good news is that if we can really have the courage to look at these enactments, we can go to some very important and deep places, both for ourselves and with our clients. The bad news is that there's a lot of mental health professionals out there that aren't looking at this kind of shadow material inside themselves, and therefore it gets acted in, like you talked about, shaming yourself, blaming yourself, or acted out towards clients in different ways. And so we're trying to, again, open up this space where it's like every relationship is a potential enactment. We bring things from our past and we project them into the present and into the future. And so how can we get to know the ways that we're contributing to these enactments? Because it takes two to have an enactment. So if we can kind of pull back some of our projections, we can be much more in the present and work with what's emerging here.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Brad.
Steph, how about for you? What's been...
Yeah, I was thinking about there are things that we eventually have as topics, but they show up in the explorations before they're actually topics. But therapeutic and covert narcissism, like that's definitely a theme that comes up a lot in our explorations that people get to work with. And I'm seeing a lot of shifting in their relationship to our own narcissism, because we all have these forms of narcissism. So that's a common theme that I think comes up. I think another one are our relationship to ruptures and how afraid people are of ruptures with their clients. And this goes back to what you were saying about enactments, like the gymnastics that we do to kind of not be in conflict with our clients, and all of the opportunities that we miss because the ruptures are so important to getting into some of the territory that we're so afraid of. Both sides of the relationship are so afraid of. So just seeing people have a new relationship to ruptures that, like you were saying, it's not so much shame based, although you were talking about a positive. It's less about shaming ourselves or fearing them or avoiding them, and more about starting to feel even revitalized by the possibility of being able to explore them.
There's so much there. I want to ask all of you about 10 more questions just on this, and I'm aware of the time, and I know we have a hard stop. So I wanted, because I know next year's space program, there's some new additions happening, and I wonder if we could talk about that for a few minutes before we close. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Brad, can you share with us more about these inside out learning weekends?
Yeah. Well, first we have, brand new material, as Stefanie said, that is emerging from the groups. We're taking a lot of notes and reading the evaluations and asking on Facebook, our group, what are the topics people are bumping up against that they'd like more for us to go into, and what are the exercises that seem really supportive and useful. So we're shaping the classes for next year. So we have 6 brand new classes with new topics. You can read all about it on the Space 2026 program website, and you don't have to have come to 2025. You can just pop right in. You can come to all 6. You can come to a few. You can come to one. we're keeping it open. We would love eventually to make this kind of like a program where people are all coming every time and deepening and having groups in between. But we're realistic that accessibility is challenging for a lot of people. So we're keeping it open. And then people that do sign up for the 2026, I believe that they're getting access to some of the materials from 2025 so that they can kind of see what we were doing and catch up a little bit. So we're also creating, this is kind of independent of space, but it emerged from space, which is we're creating an inside out learning series next year, which will be 3 weekend classes on themes that people in space really said they wanted more time to kind of unpack. So, and again, it's going to be very similar setup to space. It's going to be inside out. We'll do just very minimal, not really teaching, we're just kind of setting a frame for the topics. And so the first topic will be on narcissism from the inside out, because as Stefanie said, so many people, not only are we working with this in our life and with our clients, but we're bumping up against different themes in ourselves that it could be useful to get to know about and help us both personally and clinically. So we have a weekend in January that's called Narcissism from the Inside Out, where we'll go much deeper into some of these themes inside of ourselves and how it plays out with our clients in the clinical process. And then I believe in May is our second one on borderline dynamics. And again, same thing, borderline from the inside out. I know that's not something that people love to think about necessarily, that they themselves have borderline and narcissistic dynamics, but it's really good to know the material that does exist inside of us. And so we'll be doing a 2-day weekend on borderline from the inside out. And then later on in the year, the last one will be on cultural and intergenerational trauma. This is something that we all carry inside of us in very different ways, and having a safe, space where we can kind of get to know the different ways that we relate to our own impacts around cultural and intergenerational trauma. Again, you need more than 2 days for all these different workshops, but we'll at least do a little bit of diving into some of the ways that these live within us and impact us as both therapists and also in our own personal lives.
Okay, fantastic. You clarified some things for me. So these are completely separate from space.
Yeah. And again,
Okay.
like, people can drop into 1 or 2 or all 3. People can come to space and come to one of these. Like, we're, again,
Okay.
part of the intention of our community is that you don't have to sign up for some huge your life away to be part of what we're doing in our community. We want this to be accessible as much as we possibly can, given, the realities. And so we're trying to keep it pretty open. Again, it is nice if people want to do kind of a more immersive experience in these. And they are kind of designed to work on with each other, but we also have designed them so people can pop in. And we love getting new folks in. We had a couple new folks in this last one, and it was so cool to see how quickly they opened up being in this kind of field, and the feedback from them was really special.
Yeah. Okay, so cool. There's like 5 things landing right now, and I'm just trying to keep up with okay, so it's separate from space. You're creating kind of this buffet. What do you need in your training? What do you need? And we can come and take what we need, and also do an immersive experience if there's space for that, capacity for that. And then are you still doing consults? Can I ask that question? Maybe that's not the themed consults, the case consults. Is that something for next year that you're doing as well? Okay.
Yeah, all 3 of us will be doing those as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's independent from space, but those are other things we offer to people that are in the mental health profession. We do different consults on different themes. So we look forward to doing more of those. I don't, at the top of my head, know exactly the themes right now, but
it's all good.
But
one is on dissociation. I know that because I'm doing it. Yeah.
Marcia's on it.
I can find them pretty quickly, but
cool.
But I kind of like big picture, like it all space. It really. We're 2 years into being Complex Trauma Training Center, right? This is our second year. Am I right about that?
Amazing.
Yep.
Yes, you are.
And what our hope is that we're building more and more programs that speak directly to our mission and what we are the most excited about, which is this ongoing mentorship and the inner development of therapists and the building meaningful and sustainable professional community. And so, we think every year we're just going to have, hopefully be coming up with more and more dishes for the buffet.
Great.
Is
I
your
love it.
metaphor there. Yeah. And space is also evolving. It's kind of like our first program that we created specific to CTTC. And, like this year in 2026, we're adding office hours. And we're thinking about different ways to support triad groups, staying connected between the different classes so that we're building more continuity. And we just expect it to keep evolving as we go. While again, we're adding more things that speak to the same deep intention.
Yeah. And I really loved just that the break period where you opened it up to feedback about the triads. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there was this real co-creative experience where people were kind of naming, well, this would be really supportive for me. And anyway, I just really appreciated that. It just highlighted again how co-creative this experience has been, and appreciate the three of you and being willing to create that kind of space where we can give honest feedback. Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Emily, because again, going back to like our intention for what we're creating at CTTC in these programs is that, the three of us have been working with therapists for a long time in many different capacities. And for the last, 15, 20 years, we've been, doing a lot of consults for therapists. And all of this material is directly pulled from those experiences. This is not theoretical. We're not off. I don't think any of us are busy on our weekends reading all these articles, although maybe we should a little more, but we're not. We're in the field. I mean, we are working with therapists every single day of our careers, and all three of us are pulling. I think we're pretty attuned folks, and so we're listening for themes and topics, and sometimes we explicitly ask, of course, and we're putting together what feels like it's really the pain points for us as therapists and where we could use more support. And I know for myself, sometimes it feels like I'm giving what I wish I would have received over the years. And that feels really cool to be able to do too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really special to be on the receiving end of that too. So thank you.
I would just add, it's not just in our growth as therapists that like when we ask people to say in the chat what they got out of the class, there's a lot of personal growth too, just a more compassionate relationship to self. People feel impacted in their relationships with their clients. And I notice that myself. Even I can sit here in this podcast and notice what's happening internally in the space in a way that I wouldn't have before. Like, how am I relating to this experience in a way that might be could be opened up more, or could be that I could learn something from about myself. And I feel like our feedback is people are appreciating it on all levels of their experience.
Well, thank you, all three of you. I just am so appreciative of the mentorship that each of you have offered me for this exploration, this deepening into the space program and continuing to evolve it. Just really appreciate the three of you. And I know we have like 1 minute left. So I wondered in this last minute, were there any kind of final thoughts or things that you want our listeners to come away with?
I'll just say, if you're somebody who is, thinking about joining us next year or not sure, just you're welcome to come to the first class and check it out and see what we're talking about for real. And I also just wanted to say, Emily, thank you for trusting us and being a part of our maiden voyage here in the first class. We appreciate everybody for being part of the co-creation and from the very beginning and wanting to go on this journey with us.
Yeah, such a pleasure.
I would just say, so many therapists are really wanting to do a great job for their clients. And just even if we're not thinking so much about ourselves, which is hard for a lot of therapists, we can think about that our clients are going to benefit so much when we're getting our own support. I often think about we needed our parents to be receiving support from their parents and for our grandparents to be receiving support from their parents. And that often broke down in many of our family systems. And so, we're trying to create support so that therapists can really be as present and helpful as possible. for clients. So this is a place that no matter what kind of modality you practice, we'd welcome you and hope it would be a good fit to provide more of a foundation for the great work you're already doing.
Beautiful. It's a great way to end. Thank you, three. Appreciate you, and look forward to the coming year and all of the new offerings. And yeah, good to be together.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. You can also connect with us in other ways. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we are honored to invite you to our Space Program 2026, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Running over 6 online sessions in 2026, this interactive experiential learning program is designed to support self-care and self-discovery for therapists exploring internally, relationally, and transpersonally. CTTC faculty will welcome you into a professional community of therapists that are seeking to create greater effectiveness and resilience in our professional lives. As CTTC faculty Brad Kammer says, the intent is that this program will help us not only become more effective therapists, but also love our work more. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2026 Space Program. Thanks to Rig for producing and editing, to Tori Essex for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community and connection with you and changing the world by transforming trauma.